What does it mean to complete the square? Hi, and welcome to Algebra Examples. I'm Dr. Finch. I have a PhD in mathematics and over 20 years of experience in math education. So today we're going to talk about completing the square. It's not exactly an easy problem. There's a lot of steps to it, but we're going to make it as simple as possible. We're going to have 5 steps that we are going to use to complete the square, plus one step that we're going to use before we even get to the steps. In this case, our problem starts with 6x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. And the first thing that we want to do is make that number out front, that a value, equal to 1. And so that's the step it's a step, but it's not really a step. We're just going to kind of toss it in there. And we're going to do this by dividing both sides by 6. And whenever we have an equation, we can divide both sides of our equation by the same number. We can always make that initial number, that a value, into a 1 by doing this exact process. So I'm going to show it in a couple of steps. If you are quick on your feet, you can probably do it in less. Notice on the right-hand side of this, 0 divided by 6 is always 0. When we have our division like this, our 6 on the left-hand side breaks down into 3 different areas. We have 6 over 6 times x squared, which 6 over 6 turns into 1, minus 1/6 x, minus, and this 2/6 turns into a 1/3. Okay, so here is the equation that we are going to start with. And we're going to work from here. If you have an equation that already has a coefficient of 1 in the first spot, that is fantastic. Then there's one less thing for you to do. All right, 5 steps. Step number 1. We are going to move the constant term to the right-hand side. And I'm going to abbreviate right-hand side by RHS. I abbreviate left-hand side by LHS, just because there's a lot of writing in math and we don't have time for all of that. So what we're going to do is we are going to add 1/3 to both sides. When we add 1/3 to both sides, we are going to get x squared minus 1/6 x is equal to 1/3. All right, so step 2. We are going to note what our b is. So in this case, our coefficient b, which is always that second coefficient, right? Our b term is always this one right here, is negative 1/6 in this case. And what we are going to do with that information is we are going to calculate 1/2 b quantity squared. Notice that squared is on the outside of the parentheses. This is something that you have to be very careful with, and I've seen a lot of students have issues with that. They accidentally put it on the inside of the parentheses. If you get halfway through a complete the square problem and something's wrong and it's not squaring nicely, come back to this step. This is most likely where the issue is. Okay, so this is going to be 1/2, and we're going to put a negative 1/6 in there. I'm going to do a double parenthesis there, and then we are going to, let's go to the next line. I'm just going to multiply on the top and multiply on the bottom. So we get a negative 1 on top. 2 times 6 is 12. That whole thing is squared. And even though there's a negative in there, I'm going to actually get that negative out. It just ends up looking really gunky. When we have a squared here, the nice thing is our squared can distribute to the top and the bottom of a fraction, which makes our lives so much easier. Oh my gosh. And negative 1 squared, that's 2 copies of negative 1. which gives us a positive 1. And I'm actually going to leave this 12 squared as just 12 squared on the bottom. You can always square it out. It's 144, but trust me, what's actually going to happen is we are going to use this in the squared version. So it actually is useful in some ways to keep it like this, like we have right here. This is actually going to be the most useful version of it. All right, let's go to step number 3 now. We're going to add what we just computed. To both sides of the equation. And I'm going to stop right here and just let you know that I use EQN for equation. Again, math is a lot of writing, and we just don't have time in our lives to do all that. So again, we're going to simplify the right-hand side after we do this. Okay, so our equation that we had, remember from way back where, we had x squared minus 1/6 x is equal to 1/3. We are adding to both sides 1/12 quantity squared. Right? Because we're going to add that to both sides. So we end up with x squared minus 1/6 x plus 1/12 quantity squared is equal to 1/3 plus 1/12 quantity squared. Okay, the second half of this says simplify the right-hand side. So we're going to do that. On the right-hand side of this, first thing we're going to simplify is let's get that. I know I said I was going to leave that squared alone. The squared that you want to leave alone is the one on the left-hand side. That's going to be useful. On the right-hand side, we're going to actually write it out as 1/12 squared. Now, this looks a little bit weird. Now, notice one of the things that we want to do is we want to get, let's start by getting a 12 on the bottom. I'm going to do this in a lot of different steps just so that we all are with each other. So that is 4/12 plus, oops, that should be a plus, 1/12 squared. And we want a common denominator. Now that we have the 12 on the denominator there, we're just going to get it to be 12 squared. Okay, so I do appreciate your patience. If you have a calculator, you can probably do this a lot faster. I tend to like to practice my math skills, so I do not use a calculator in general. I will even go out of my way to do things on the side, like 12 times 4. What is that? Okay, let's see. It's 48. Stuff that it's just good to do because it's healthy for your brain. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So keep that in mind as you are practicing your math. Also, keep in mind that your teacher may or may not let you use a calculator on certain parts of a quiz or exam. So it's good to have those math skills practicing in the back of your head, right? All right. One thing you'll notice that oh my gosh, this is so pretty. The numerator of this is a perfect square. 7 squared is equal to 49. Oh, is that nice? Okay, so we have this. Now, let's actually, I'm going to rewrite that one more time. We have x squared minus 1/6x plus 1/12 squared is equal to 7 squared over 12 squared. Whew. Okay, step 4. We're getting close. At this point, we are going to factor the left-hand side. LHS for left-hand side as a perfect square. And I'm going to actually draw the box for a square here. Sorry about that. So we have as a perfect square. When we have a perfect square, that means that we have the same thing times itself. Here is why we want to, whoops, let me actually make one slight change. I'm going to write this as 12 squared there. We are going to take, the way that this is written, we are going to take this information right here, and that is going to be the number that we are going to put in our perfect square. That's the reason why we want to leave it as a squared instead of actually writing out as 1 over 44, because to take this mess on the left-hand side with the fractions and this and that and try and figure out what the factorization of that, oh my gosh, that's just too much. Let's not do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to notice that the last term, and this is why we want to do a perfect square, the stuff inside the parentheses where you have squared, that's going to be the junk that you throw in here. So we have x minus 1 over 12, and then parentheses, the whole thing squared, and we leave our right-hand side alone. Okay, last step. We are finally on step 5. I know these get to be long. We are going to apply the square root to both sides of the equation. Okay, so if we take the square root of x minus 1 over 12 quantity squared is equal to the square root of 7 squared over 12 squared. Now there's one thing that we didn't do here that I haven't written down yet, and this is going to be a little bit thing that you have to remember. When you take the square root, you're going to have to put a plus and minus in there. So don't forget that. You only have to put it on one side. That's going to get enough for you, but don't forget to tack that in there. Square root and squared cancel each other out. Super nice. So on the left-hand side, we get x minus 1 over 12. On our right-hand side, we have our plus and minus still. And our square root, we can distribute that over the numerator and the denominator. And I'm going to simplify this a little bit. Square root of 7 squared is 7. Square root of 12 squared is 12. So we get x minus 1 over 12 is equal to plus or minus 7/12. Okay. And this is the point at which, you can sometimes do this without splitting it into two parts. I like to split into two parts. Otherwise, I get too much stuff going on in my head. One part is going to have the positive solution, and the other part will have the negative part of the solution, right? So over here we have positive 7/12. Over here we have negative 7/12. And we are going to add 1/12 to both sides. On our first solution. So that is going to give us x is equal to, and let's break that down a little bit. 8 is 2 times 4. We can write 12 as 3 times 4. So one of our solutions is going to be 2/3. As for our other solution, we have negative 7/12 plus 1/12. So that is going to give us a negative 6/12. Right? And we can break this down into 1 times 6 on the numerator, 2 times 6 on the denominator. So that gives us x is equal to negative 1/2. So there's our two solutions for completing the square. When you complete a square for a quadratic function, you will always have two solutions. I hope you enjoyed this. Please send any questions that you'd like to see answered to purplefinchmath@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.